Well, welcome, Theresa. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Always good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for taking an hour to talk to me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation.
Sure. So, I actually saw you for the first time before Creators Circle because you did an interview with we're in a coaching circle together, right? And so I
Hmm.
saw you before Circle. You signed up right before me. And
Okay.
so I've always had this view of you as you're like a senior member of Circle. Right? You did it
Yes.
last year. I came in this year. So Theresa is a senior member. She gave me an idea about what my coaching circle experience would be like. So thank you
Yeah,
for leading the way there.
absolutely. That's so fun. I love when people find videos of me being interviewed
Yeah.
that number one, I don't always remember all of either like the podcast
Yeah.
or conversations. So it's fun when people share something like that because I'm always like, oh yes, that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny that like I'm putting these out there and like my voice will be out and people far away or in a long time from now can
Hmm.
know me in this way, right? And know you in this way.
Yep.
It's magic really, right? Like we are in the future as far as I'm concerned. So first, I'd love if you would share a bit about you, just your life and what work you do as a coach.
Sure. So just a little bit of it's so hard to just a little bit about me. So a
Or a
little bit about
lot.
me.
You get the whole hour, so
So the journey to becoming a coach started with what I would call a quarter life crisis, right? Back in, I would say 2011, and I was finishing up a master's in business. And at that point in time, I knew that climbing the corporate ladder was probably not for me. And I
Mhm.
also had given myself 32 months in a master's program to figure out what was going to be next.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of that journey, I didn't know. And
Mhm.
I also didn't know there was this thing called life coaching.
Yeah.
So in my one of my final courses in my master's program, it was a leadership course
Mhm.
that at the end of the day was actually disguised as a listening course. And in that course, we had to come up with like our purpose statement. And I remember spending weeks like discovering that my purpose was to inspire others to live an extraordinary life. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, what do you do with that?
Right. Where
So
do I take that? Yeah. Mhm.
put it in Google
Mhm.
and a life coach popped up. And I was like, oh, this is the thing.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting because that's how I found this journey towards life coaching and hired my first coach and realized, oh my gosh, this is a thing. And you can actually help people overcome challenges and obstacles and become the greatest, best version of themselves and also make a living doing that. So
Yeah.
that's really how it started, was
Uh-huh.
a leadership course and a master's program that was really a listening course that got me to slow down, get
Mhm.
still, get quiet, and really listen for what was true for me. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. That's like at the bottom is like, tell me about this listening, and you like got to it right at the beginning. So I mean, I've noticed it's like the main theme, right, in your Facebook
Mhm.
posts and the things I hear you speak about. So, um, we'll definitely get into that. Maybe that answers all the questions here. But first, what kind of work do you do as a coach right now? So you work with people now.
I work with people now, and that purpose statement is pretty similar, right? To
Mhm.
inspire others to live an extraordinary life through the power of listening. So, and again, without number one, not knowing the questions you have for me, but two, not trying to jump ahead. One of the things that I've learned and I believe is that the quality of our life is directly related to the quality of our listening. So
Yeah.
if somebody's struggling in their career, if somebody's struggling in their relationship, if somebody's struggling in their even their spiritual walk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is directly linked back to the quality of their listening about themselves, about their partner, about God, about work, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So really slowing down to understand that and to listen to what we're actually listening to has been the path and the gateway. So I started my journey really trying to talk to women, and I call myself an old millennial, people like me, right, who maybe had been perceived as successful from the outside, meaning doing very well in their professional corporate careers, on the proverbial fast track, high performer, high achiever,
Yeah, yeah.
but having a sense of unfulfillment, or that
Right.
question like, is this it, right? And being around a lot of people, women at the time, who felt trapped based off of the lifestyle that they had created and the work that they were doing, even though there was a sense of unfulfillment. So that's how it started. And then over time, it expanded not just to working with women, but working with men, working with organizations, and everything coming back to that through line of listening and helping really people create what they desire through listening.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I felt when you were describing at first you were working with women who had designed a lifestyle for themselves and then found it unfulfilling in ways they hadn't expected, probably, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is so much that I have so much in common with that and who I've worked with in the past because it's been a lot of stay-at-home moms and
Okay.
homeschooling moms and even moms with jobs, but um, finding that same thing is like I chose this thing and I've dove in all the way into it, right? Why am like I got what I wanted, right? I'm
Right.
doing it. Why does this also kind of suck, right? Like,
Right.
and I feel
Yeah.
bad for saying that, right? And
Yeah.
but a coach is a perfect person to work with, right? To like get through those first feelings and being and realizing, especially I know you do groups, right? That's what's amazing
Yeah.
about groups is being like, oh, look, she feels like that. She feels like that. Like this is
Right.
just a thing, and we can embrace it and work through it.
When I
And
started one of my groups that's been in around the longest, they referred to themselves as Perfectionists Anonymous. Like they created that name for
uh-huh.
themselves. I didn't.
Yeah.
But that was the one thing that they noticed, was this strive for perfection and, having to get it right and needing to perform at a high level. And it
Yeah.
was like, then you meet me and it's like, yeah, 80%, that's good enough. Ship it. Let's go. Right. And it's like,
Right.
whoa,
Right.
whoa, whoa. No,
Right.
it's like taking the pressure off, looking at what's true, listening for what you really want.
Yeah.
And not just doing things because you think that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah, there's the supposed to be doing, and then there's looking outside of ourselves for validation, right? And
mhm.
it's like I know I'm doing a good job because I got promoted. I know I'm doing a good job because, right?
Yeah.
XYZ. Um, but yeah, to me that leads directly into listening because we're listening to these other people outside of us, right? And the key, it
Yep.
sounds like the work that you do is leading people to listen, right? Back to themselves.
Yes.
So hold on, I'm gonna plug in my internet.
I was like, it's
Pause.
breaking up a little bit, but I'm still listening.
I got a little thing that says not stable. Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Tech break. All right, so I live in a farmhouse that was originally built in 1775. So once in a while, the internet doesn't quite go through the walls, and I have to plug my computer in. Anyway, I just had an interaction with a client that reminded me of you, and she is very spiritual. She's Christian and prays, and but like high anxiety. And so I asked her about her prayer, and what happens when she's praying, right? 'Cause she talks about it. Um, and she said, and she described it as she's talking, right? She's expressing herself, and she does that with people too, right? And so I suspected
Right.
that. So so much, so much, so much, so much talking. And so we worked on slowing down and being silent and just listening. And it like,
Beautiful.
right? Was like she's the
Uh,
type A, like go get it. All production comes through me. I get it done. And so
mm,
I watched in this person how just even the mention, the idea, the suggestion, right, broadened her world.
yeah.
So I can see how impactful it can be to people that maybe haven't had that, right, in their field of vision, that idea that listening is just as important as creating, right?
Right. It's the thing we do the most next to breathing is listen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting too, like without knowing your client, and just in the way that you described her as a Christian. And it's like there are scriptures, right? That people can recite book, chapter, verse, but they really haven't like listened to and like had this embodied.
Yeah.
There's the intellectual knowing, and then
Right,
there's
right.
like embodied wisdom that only comes through practice. So even just describing her as like everything comes, like she has to do it all.
Yeah.
Like there are so many scriptures that speak that with, you know, that just basically speak to we can do nothing without God,
Uh-huh.
right? And again, this isn't like some, but I'm just sharing like
Yeah,
depending
yeah.
on what you're listening to.
No, but it's not just Christianity, right? It's every single belief system, right?
Right.
There is an emphasis on stillness, and there's an emphasis on letting whatever, I say, whatever grows the grass and grows the trees grows us too. You can call it
Yeah,
whatever you want, right? I like source and universe and all these other words, but whatever it is, right? It is moving us. So let's let
right.
it, you know?
It's beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah, so how has listening more impacted your life? So you mentioned different areas of your life. So how do
Yes.
you incorporate it into your relationship and your work and just you?
Yeah. So more often than not, what people are really listening to themselves more than maybe listening to another person or their life. And I say
Mm.
that because when I invite people to practice listening, I remind them that listening isn't just what you hear with your ears. It's like we're going to bring in all five senses, right? What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? What are you like touching, hearing, all of it? And then sixth sense, intuition, like so much of it is visceral, the
Yeah.
listening. And so
Uh-huh.
much of that is a distraction from what's actually happening or what someone's really saying. So
Uh-huh.
oftentimes messages come to us, but we're over here being triggered, or did they just say that? Like there's this whole other conversation that's happening
Yeah. Yeah.
based off of what that has nothing to do with what's really happening. So when I invite people to really slow down, and it's like you can smell a message, absolutely, like you can smell if somebody's afraid, like it's really really wild. So how is listening impacted my life? When I really learned how to, even just that first basic step, and I learned this in my master's program with
Uh-huh.
Dr. Rick Belge. It's like step one, what are you sensing?
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you feeling? Like the senses, that is all listening. So for me, that's step one.
Yeah.
So
Perceiving, right? Yeah.
receiving like full on awareness, whether it's in my relationship, whether it's with a client, whether it's with a colleague, like it really doesn't matter. It's like what's going on over here, because that's going to inform the quality of the conversation or the
Yeah.
quality of my
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
So it's made the biggest difference, because when I stopped talking,
Huh?
right? And I just start really observing what's happening, because there's what's happening over here, and then there's what's actually happening over there. And so much of the practice of listening is being able to understand what's happening inside of you, set that aside, and like really go in with, like, be with somebody,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then everything opens up from there, because when a person actually knows that they have your undivided attention, when
Mhm.
they know, like, hey, just so you know, my phone is off, like it's me and you for the next hour. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like when you do these small things that let somebody know that it's just you and them,
Yeah.
it changes the entire dynamic. Or when you ask somebody if they could set their phone aside because there's
Right.
something you really want to tell them and you want to make sure that they hear you,
Yeah.
quality of the conversation goes up, quality of the relationship goes up, the chances for misunderstanding, like that still may
Yes.
happen,
Hmm.
but you, like dipping out of the conversation because you got a text, like none of that happens because
Yeah.
of your presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still may want to run out the room, but
Right. Doesn't make it comfortable, but
right.
it makes you have, when you're in that deep state of listening and presence, it's like all your facilities, all your capabilities, all your you is there
Yeah.
to focus, right? And to serve you and the relationship. Um, Something you said reminded me of a podcast I listened to yesterday about they talked about an exercise they did where they, the eye contact thing where you stare into someone else's eyes for 5 minutes without speaking, like we could do right now,
Yeah.
sort of, except it's not really. And she talked about how she does this in her workshops and she physically does it too. And every single time, doesn't matter how many times she does it, she feels, um, after minute 2 and minute 3, all of a sudden, like it's me watching you and you watching me. And then all of a sudden, somehow that dissolves and it's just us doing this together, like as a whole.
Right.
Right. And the separation between them, it doesn't matter if you've never met them before, right? It dissolves and no words are being said. And you just
Right.
reminded me, like, oh my gosh, that's listening with all of their senses,
That's
right?
it.
That's being so present, no phones, no nothing, in a workshop. But,
I
and
have it is behind me. Hold on. Can you see this?
yeah,
I have a client who gave me this because I always talk about like the snow globe analogy. And like most people, like when they're coming into an interaction or from a previous meeting or doing whatever, they're showing up like this. Like
right.
you can't really see what's going on in there. And then the reason that before I will talk to anybody, sometimes one-on-one, but in every group, we start every session with 3 minutes of silence
Uh-huh.
and
Beautiful.
stillness.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody comes in like, like, it's
Right.
not really how they sound, but it's like after just 3 minutes of silence and stillness,
Mm-hmm.
that same question, how are you, when you ask it after the stillness, completely different answer. What would
Yeah.
you love to create today? Completely different answer. So part of inviting people into the silence, into the stillness, just to listen creates clarity, right?
Yeah.
Because before it was like, was that a red door? Yeah. And some
Right.
little,
Right. You can
you know
see.
what I mean? Right? It's like we can see. And more often than not, people are really ready to do some great work
Mm-hmm.
after
Yeah.
stillness.
Yeah, and getting that narrative out of there. I think the podcast was about self-acceptance last night that I was listening to. And when you held up the snow globe and was like, "Oh yeah, that's a red door." And I'm like, if we can't see the red door that's inside of us, how the heck are we going to accept it? Right?
Right.
If we can't even, like, step 1,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Step one,
stop
stop
and
it.
look and listen. Yeah. Like
Yes.
we can be walking around thinking we've accepted ourselves and right thinking we have accepted the world around us and all these things that we want to do to make our lives more fulfilling, but if we're not still and listening, right, how do we
Correct.
even know? Yeah.
What are you even listening to? That's the number one question I'll ask is who are you listening to and how is it serving you? Like what, and the way you know is based off of honestly, like how you're feeling,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
That'll trigger, like, that'll let you know, like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Well, what have you been listening to? How have you been talking to yourself? Has somebody said something that you decided to listen to and now you've adopted that as truth? Like I always talk about these trains of thought going by,
Yeah.
right? There's that statistic that says there's 60,000 thoughts a day. And I just tell people those are little train cars.
Absolutely. There. Yeah.
80% are negative and 95% are repetitive, right? So our job is to like stand on the platform
Yeah.
and watch those go by until the correct train of thought, if you will, or the one that's going to lead you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Then we get on that one. The rest of them are just non-useful.
Yeah, I think we've talked about thoughts, and you're the third interview, and all 3 of them, and I'm glad because it's the most core step, that it's the most essential step into inner work. This is the step into inner work, right? So
Right.
for to become the witness, and for me, the perspective that our thoughts are tools, not truths, right? Like our brains are here to help us survive, not understand the truth of the universe, right? Like
Right.
it's not like we can aim
Protect
for
me.
that, right? But literally it's going to create thoughts and produce thoughts in our mind because it's like an experiment. It's like, will this help you get where you want to go? Will this help you get where you want to go? You listened last time, right?
Right.
Must have been
Right.
useful. And so when we can start to navigate through our thoughts and um eventually create new ones, right? And let those be the repetitive ones. That's
Yes.
where like the power of inner work begins, right?
100%. 100%. One of my favorite scriptures talks about to not be conformed by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right?
Huh? Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
if you want to transform, it's, you have to renew your mind. You have like, and it's like, I want to take these thoughts captive. I want to be awake and I want to be paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think that phrase, I don't remember who said it, but it's like paying attention is so important. It's an investment, like of your energy,
Oh my
of your
gosh.
time,
Yeah.
to just start to witness these things, because unless you are listening to the
Yeah.
invitation to slow down and stop and start paying attention, you just operate from like conditioned habitual thought patterns and ways of being, and you're not even conscious of them.
Right.
And that's where and why I can see the innocence in pretty much everybody.
Absolutely. I
No,
just
you
did a
don't even know what's happening, you know?
right. And also, let's not like pretend that we're not going to grow through our whole lives and let things
Yeah.
go. So we're all operating in ways, right? Me included, that I'm going to let go next year, right? Because I'm going to find a better
Yeah.
one. So I'm not going to pretend that I know the best way or that I have something figured out, right?
Magic.
Next year.
Yeah.
I just did a post about how everything, I'm looking at like the stark trees because I'm up here
Okay.
where it gets cold and snowy. And it's like everything composts, right? The earth
Mhm.
composts everything, right? And every as without, so within, right?
Mhm.
And so we're constantly like, I love that you use the word regeneration, right? Like things come up in our mind. It's not all meant to be kept forever, right?
Mhm.
And when we believe our thoughts, we're kind of keeping them, we're building our schematics, right?
Yeah.
Of how we understand the world. But if we can be in a continually state of listening and deciding which ones to believe and which train car to get on, the rest can
Yeah.
be composted, right?
That's true.
That'll be fertile ground for later. Like, thanks, brain. And I'm going to choose this one to listen to, right?
Yeah. And so much of it too is like we talked, like past programming and you know, listenings from parents and teachers and people who they were just doing their best, right? So it's like
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
much of this is being willing to listen, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I had something
What
I
do
wanted
you
to tell
feel?
you. Yeah, yeah. I've had this thought at the beginning. You were talking about silence, and I listened to this podcast a long time ago. I just saw a link for it today. It must still be popular, and it's about a guy who records silence, right, with like
Mhm.
really good audio equipment. And he goes to places, and it's basically just places away from humans, right? Like he went into the rainforest, right, and
Yeah,
did nothing but just recorded. But he goes all these places where you don't, I mean, the rainforest obviously has cool sounds, but he just
right.
picks all these places where you think of there's nothing there, right?
Mhm.
But guess
Mhm.
what? Yes, there is,
Mhm.
and he's like, you're picking up the rhythm of life, right?
Mhm.
So this idea that there's always something to listen to, there's always a
Yes,
deeper layer. That's what I think his thing was like, there's always a deeper layer, right?
always.
Peel it back again. You're not going to find the bottom, right?
True.
Yeah.
True.
So one thing we haven't talked about is listening and parenting. That's something I've been
Okay.
thinking about for a while. And I was like, what does Theresa have to say, right? Like your experience and not it doesn't even have to be like some deep wisdom about it. Like it's a thing I struggle with, right? And I'm into it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
still it's a place in my life where, listening to the woods, I have complete control of that kind of feeling, right? But
Okay.
there's something about listening with
Sorry.
my children, right? That challenges me more. It expands me more, right?
Okay. So I have like I'm watching all the trains go by as as you talked about listening with children.
Yeah.
It was funny. Um, we had our like family day date and we had stopped to get Slurpees and
Mhm.
my husband was in the car and I took the kids in so they could pick which ones they wanted.
Uh-huh.
And they're getting their Slurpees and I'm like, that one has caffeine. No, right.
Right,
So they're
right. Yeah,
picking the ones
let's
that
yeah.
they want. And then I forget. Oh, so I end up getting a frozen Coke, and my daughter says to me, "Why do you get that one?" And I said, "Because mommy's a grown up and mommy can have the caffeine." And then there was this other parent, this other woman. I don't know if she didn't have children with her, and she goes, "Wow, you're really patient." And
Oh, yeah.
I said, "Yeah." And I go, "But I knew what she was saying, because when I was raised, you didn't ask, why do you get that one?" And if the parent, it wasn't because there was caffeine, like there were
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a lot
Right.
of
It was
these,
just no. Yeah.
there was,
Yeah.
right? There was not this dialogue. The children didn't have I'm like, I'm listening to the non-useful listenings, like, are my parents going to watch this? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is how it works real time, but you didn't really, it just was what it was. You didn't
Uh-huh.
ask questions. It was because I said so. How
Yeah.
about that?
It's a different kind
Right.
of listening, right?
You
It was
said a
you
different
listening to
kind of,
your parent, right? That was,
right. So that was really interesting to me. And I remember, just kind of bringing our conversation full circle, it always helps me to remember that I have my own listening going on, and so does my child. So my daughter, Sarah, I don't know if you've seen pictures of her, she has albinism,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So she has no pigmentation, looks just like a combination of my husband and I, pure white skin, blonde afro,
Uh-huh.
right? Blue
Yeah.
eyes. And I remember when she was 2,
Mm-hmm.
she said, she asked the question about, why doesn't she have brown skin?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the importance of listening, right? Because there's my past, right?
Right.
Of
Right.
being one of the first Black families in an all white community. And then what did, your Blackness mean? And, that being triggered, and me having a whole experience about what it meant and felt like to be different. Always the only Black person, always often the only female later, right? In
Yeah.
corporate.
Yeah.
And it's like that kick of like, oh no, like how I respond to this has the ability to shape who she is and how she feels about herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Period. Right?
It's unavoidable. Right. Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unavoidable, but through listening and understanding, I am having an experience, 5 senses. I need to listen to that first, even if it's
Right.
in an instant, like what's going on over here. So before you react and open your mouth and say something that could have this beautiful little girl questioning her identity and
Yeah.
her value and her worth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You better get this figured out. And it can work, it
Mhm.
can happen really, really quickly with
Yeah.
practice of listening. So it's just answering, and she's 2. It's like,
Right.
because this is how God made you and you're perfect. Okay, mommy, right? And she just goes off. And then here's my husband, like, and I'm looking, right? You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
because he's got his own listening. I've got my listening.
Yes.
He's over
Yes.
here, like, hey, somebody tell me something. So as a parent, it's for me, listening is what is going on in me first
Yeah.
before I don't want to, uh, you know, I was raised in a do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You didn't ask certain things, you were here for this particular reason, and
Yeah.
this is right. So I'm sharing this primarily because you also asked about like my story, and it's
Right.
like, you imagine being one of the first Black families in an all white community. There's a lot of listenings, especially when your parents were born in the 50s, about what it means to be Black,
Yeah. Yeah.
not based off of not real things,
No,
right?
but you hit the nail exactly on the head. And I just thought of this right now. So you're teaching me as we go, but about how I experience that myself as having more trouble listening to my children because of the extra layer of I want to really be sorted inside myself, be fully
Mhm.
listened to myself, right? Before I
Mhm.
respond. And everything's happening in real time all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Right? So it definitely is that, yeah, that extra layer of, I really want to be sorted out for them, right?
Yeah, and people forget that it's like 3 minutes in a group coaching program. You can take 30 seconds and say, give mommy a minute.
Right. Right.
right? You always have time
Yeah.
to sort yourself out, to ask for more time, to think before you speak.
It's the ultimate self-care, isn't it? Listening to
It
yourself.
is. And then you're
Yeah.
still a human being. So like there are days where you're just like, because I said
Yeah.
so, right?
Yeah. 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 No judgment here
You're
about
just
any
like, you could
parenting.
say why
Yeah.
again? Like I don't, you will
Yeah.
go on timeout, right? But it's like timeout is different from anyway. But I'm saying this because so much of parenting is listening. It's like parenting ourselves so we can parent our kids.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Two stories that are coming up about my child listening. I have one child, my middle child, who talks like a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. It'll just be
Mm-hmm.
constant for a very long period of time. And I was I was just cleaning up the kitchen, and it was the morning, and I don't know what was going on, but he was talking endlessly. And I think I'd already asked him, to take a break or go in the other room because I could tell I couldn't hear my own thoughts, right? Anyway, he's still talking, and I didn't even notice it, but out of my mouth came, "Why are you still talking?" And he
Mm-hmm.
heard me. He says, "Is my talking bothering you, mommy?" And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of is." He's like, "Oh, okay." He kept talking, but it was like, "Oh, my thoughts came out my mouth and he can hear them," right? And it
Yeah.
I was worried about cleaning, and it's like he listened to me more than I did in that moment,
Yeah.
right?
They're always listening. They really
Totally.
are.
Yeah.
Um, and for me to remember that they're not just listening to what we say, they're listening to everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I don't need to walk on eggshells around my kid. I just need to be aware that they're listening and then they're going to model who we are.
Yeah.
I parent my two kids, my son and my daughter, very differently. My son, you just have to look at him the wrong way and he just, right, it's just over.
Oh.
With my daughter, it's like you repeat yourself and you might have to become very stern, like in your voice with her. And I watched her become very stern with my son.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I
right.
just like, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I do sound like that when
Yeah.
but then I tell her, hey, I'm the parent. Like, you don't need to talk to your brother in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah. Be a sister,
You
not a
kind of,
mom, right? I tell my
yeah,
kids that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this year is my year of miracles, and so I was, especially the first week of the year, like you're really like into it, and I was like making a miracle of everything, right? Which I
Yeah.
should continue to do because it's really a lot of fun. Improves life a whole lot. Just in having life be an indulgence kind of
Yeah.
thing. But the the story that I didn't realize so much, I didn't notice my own listening until I'm talking to you about it, was we were going to the grocery store, and I do not like to go to the grocery store with my boys, right? That's like my story, right? Is like I just would rather go by myself and not, you know, do the whole
Mm-hmm.
they're 8 and 4. And but we're going to the grocery store, and I'm in my year of miracles, so I'm going to make this great, right? I have this attitude that I'm going to make it great, not just going to get through it. And
Yeah.
so my son doesn't want to get out of the car, and I saw myself switch to, well, what do you want to do? Right? Like tell
Mhm.
like to into listening instead of we're going, get out, da 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 da. Da. And
Right.
that switch right there, I remember doing it. It changed the whole shopping trip,
Yeah.
right? Me switching from, and it's like the management to leadership that we've talked about before,
Mhm.
switch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the managing is just like, get out of the car. We're getting the food. We'll be home
Yeah.
soon, right? And I
Yeah.
realized you're making me see that it's the switch to listening that switched me to leadership. And like, we're a team now. How are we going to
Yeah.
make this awesome? And what ended up happening was I said, I need your help. I just need strong
Yep.
arms and I need hands to reach things and I just need your help. So we got out of the car, and he got a cart and started pushing it. And at first I was like, no, 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 you're 4, right? But I was like, this is what he wants. This is how he feels involved. So I'm seeing myself
Yeah.
listen to him. He pushed it the entire trip. Like I'm sure we were there for an hour, right? And he pushed because it was slow. And we had
I
to
thought
like,
did he knock anything over? Did
he
he hit
did,
your
he
ankle?
bumped one thing, but mostly he just like went really long ways to get places, right? Like
Yeah.
because we had to take the easy path. But anyway, this conversation is helping me kind of process that, and like, oh, it was my listening, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't,
Yeah,
yeah,
because you were out of the train of we just need to get in and out and do as I say, right? It's like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's like, what is this? What would make this fun? What would you love, child? And that's not every time, but what I
right,
know is when I do that, when I be that for my kids, everything is so much smoother. When I look in their eyes and talk to them,
yeah,
everything like it's just different.
yep, yep,
It's completely different. So um yeah, listening and parenting, it's like the most loving thing we can be, not just for our kids, but for anybody, is just
yeah,
fully present.
yeah, yeah. I want to bring this back around to maybe not self-care, maybe
Mhm,
self-love, right?
mhm,
The
mhm.
listening as self-love. And as I think of, this is what my son wanted, and I took a moment and listened, and we had a good time. Like we can do that with ourselves, right? To me,
Yeah.
this is, so my question is, what would be epic, right? And it's kind of like what you want to create, right? But for me, maybe as a stay-at-home mom, I don't know, it's this feeling of like, I have all these chores to do, right? But how am I going to make this great? I can go through life and have chores to do and have it be like, oh, I'm going to go do this again, even though I don't really want to, or I hate this, right? Let's like go into the grocery store. Or we can have this attitude, right? And maybe you do that for a little while before you ask yourself the question. It brings up the question, all right, I'm not having fun. How can we make this epic, right?
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
don't, you're showing me the answer to that is in the listening, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my brain isn't always going to be able to figure that out. It's
No.
like I have to listen to the little whisper inside that shows up when I get quiet, right?
Yes. And the quiet doesn't have to be like an hour, like in meditate. I'm telling you, I tell people all the time, like 3 minutes, 30 seconds, take a breath. Like, but I'll often tell people just place your hand on your heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
that's one of the fastest ways to just like get back connected to you.
Yes. I have that too. I teach people to say, I'm here. I'm right here, like to
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
right? And I do, I tell people that because I do it, and it immediately makes me feel not alone. I can be
Yeah.
by myself in the bathroom, right? But there's
Yeah.
something about the touch, right? And the
Yeah.
I'm right
Just
here. Yeah.
present moment.
Yeah. Awesome. So I want to shift a little bit into back to coaching.
Sure.
And yeah, so we can have this practice of listening to ourselves and listening to our partners and listening to our children and right, like the
Hmm.
world, really,
Hmm.
right? Um, I'm interested in, for you personally, how coaching, right,
Hmm.
has, so the inner listening is like one part of the inner work, right? But coaching to me has really accelerated my inner work, or really helped me just expand in directions that I didn't have access to by myself, right? So I'm
Yeah.
interested, yeah,
Being
in
or coaching other people.
both. Let's talk about getting coached first, right? Being coached, like
Hmm.
what's your experience
Hmm.
with that? How is that added to your life?
Um, so being coached, and it really doesn't matter like who the coach was, right? Because I've had plenty of coaches over the years. For me, the power of being coached is being in a conversation with another human being who is deeply listening to you and helping you see what you can't see,
Yeah.
right? So when you're in the game of life or on the court or on the stage, it's like you're doing the thing, like you're
Yeah.
living it out. And then the coach comes in to say, hey, right, next time you take your jump shot, like square off, like,
Right. Yeah.
turn like 45 degrees and you'll sink it or whatever. So it's like the
Yeah.
power of coaching is like we can come back and replay the tapes of who we've been, right, in our life or
Uh-huh.
whatever. And then that coach can say, well, I can sense in your voice, like you're really whatever. Or that coach can
Yeah.
say, my experience has been X, Y, or Z, or tell me more about what you meant when you said whatever. And
Yeah.
I think coaching is so powerful because no one's giving you advice. No one's trying to fix you. No one's trying to save you. No, everyone's really just holding a space for you to be the best, highest version of yourself. Right. And it's like, if they can see what's getting in the way of that and you can't because like you're in it, that's
Yeah.
the power of coaching.
Yeah. And the
Being coached.
questions, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, being coached. The questions, that's where the power is, right? Because I think so often, we're in a situation and we're like trying hard, trying hard, trying hard, trying hard. And to me, the questions that a coach will ask me, it's like, listen over here, right?
Yeah.
Listen over here. Have you
Yep.
listened over here yet? And it's like
Yeah.
discovering all the nooks and crannies of myself that I
Yep.
haven't peeked in yet, right?
Yeah. And I would say it's not, my experience has been it's not for the faint of heart. Like, like if you're looking for someone to lie to you, make, rah rah, cheer you, like
Yeah.
there's a line in like my bio that a good friend of mine wrote for me, and I love it because it's true. And it's like and I'm gonna butcher it now because I'm trying to recite it, but the point
Yeah.
is it's like to be the best one gets to work with the best. So I
Mhm.
spend my time identifying the best and investing my time and resources and working with the best. And somebody who brings out the best in you um, calls forth your greatness.
Yeah.
And it like, and then there's a certain level of, there's a, it's like a call to reach higher, to be who
Mhm.
you know you can be, to even just get in the conversation. And that's why I say like it's just different. It's like when people say, oh, can you hold me accountable? Right.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
no. So I'm thinking of like the experience of being coached, and it's this willingness to be totally seen, this willingness to just lay it all on the table, this willingness to just be told there's another way, even if you're so committed to a different way.
Yeah.
um and there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that, like for someone to hold up a mirror. And I think the best part about coaching is when you are working with some of the best people on the planet, it's also the reminder that you are that. So like everything that you see in this person, like you couldn't see it if it wasn't in you.
Yes. Yes.
And being able to just like know, okay, I am that too. And then turning around, right? And being that for your
Yeah.
own clients, right?
Yeah. The access to someone who's um been practicing their own inner work at a really high level. I just love the access to the self-acceptance and the love
Yeah.
that I realize sometimes when I'm being coached or when I'm coaching someone else, and it can be the amount of love we have for ourselves can vary depending on the area, I think, of ourselves, right? That we're talking about. But sometimes I've never experienced love that deep
Yeah.
for my mistakes or
Yeah.
for, do you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
different parts of us that are like, we just know it's not that lovable, this part over here. It's just not that lovable, and it's because it's not good or whatever. But when you're around somebody who's like, it's all human and we will love it all,
Yeah.
right? And we come back to ourselves in love over and over and over, and that's how
Over
you
and
love
over and
life,
over.
right? Right? It's not about
Yeah.
staying there forever and not ever moving. It's
No,
the
but
practice
you
of
will
coming
stay
back.
there forever and you will not move if you don't look at it, if you don't bring the light in to cast out the fear. Like that's what keeps
You'll
people
you will be
stuck.
right, right,
You will
right.
be there. Like, so it's like, all right, when you're ready to look at that thing that
Yeah,
like has you, right?
yeah.
Then you'll be able to transcend it or whatever. But it's like not rushing that, not needing that to happen sooner than it
Right, just
happens.
allowing it when it's ready. Now, let's switch to coaching people,
Yeah.
right? Because what came up in me next was like, yeah, and so as a coach, like I'm
Hmm.
very aware of what it takes in me, right? How I
Hmm.
need to design myself, create myself to be with people and to
Correct.
go to those places that they don't want to look at, or maybe they never have, or they've looked at them and because they've looked with their parents or with whoever, right, that has shame in that area, right, they think
Right.
that's the only option, right? And so
Yeah.
what do you feel like it takes as a coach, right? How do you design yourself? How do you uh, love to be with your clients in those areas that are uncomfortable?
Um, so with everybody that I work with, we have a we have like a coaching kickoff
Uh-huh.
where we spend 90 minutes to 2 hours talking about like creating an agreement for how we're gonna work together for our engagement, right?
Yeah.
And in that conversation, we cover everything from
Uh-huh.
like how much time, like being on time, what authenticity actually looks like. We also talk about coachability, like
Uh-huh.
the invitation, and they're agreeing to show up honest, open, willing to test things and try things. They literally
Yeah.
have to say, I agree. And then I tell them how I show up for them. Right. And I tell
Okay,
them, I
yeah.
will make sure that I have rested, I have eaten well, I have exercised, and that I
Yeah.
am fully present so that you get 100% of the best of me. And then I say, does that work for you? And they typically seem kind of like, oh my, I said, you don't have to do all of that. I'm just telling you what I'm
Yeah.
doing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
prepare
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to be with you. And then
Yeah.
I'll also let them know that I'm not here to please them, but
Yeah.
I'm here to serve. And I really outline like what that means, like the difference, like
Yeah.
because people don't
Not
know. So,
everybody's most people I'd say have never had a relationship like that. Like I'm going to say this and it's I don't care if you don't like me after I say it,
and I
right?
tell them this will be a relationship unlike any relationship you've ever
You've
had in
ever
your life.
had.
Like you
Yeah.
set the table. So I explain to them like sometimes I'll like the high flame versus the low flame coaching and what that means. Like sometimes we need somebody to be really gentle and nurturing and
Yeah.
hold like a very gentle, delicate space. And then other times it's like we you know, I might sense that it would be useful for me to bring more of the masculine,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
into this conversation so you hear me and you actually understand. And they're on board with this. It's like, can you agree to this? And if they
Yeah.
don't, then it's like we renegotiate, we talk about it. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, it's like there's a whole hour and a half to 2 hour conversation about what this relationship is and who I
Yeah.
am being for you and how I'm in asking you to show up for the coaching, to prepare, to like, and
Yeah.
it may sound like a lot, but it's actually the most loving in-service thing we can do for our clients because now they know what they've agreed to and everybody can relax, right?
Yeah.
It's done and we can get in there and we can do some great work.
And setting those I don't love the word boundaries, but those
Agreements.
agreements, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. Setting those agreements, it's such a wonderful example for intentional relationship,
Yeah.
right? Because just like we aren't most usually intentionally listening to ourselves or intentionally working on ourselves until we kind of learn that pattern of being,
Yeah.
we're also not being that intentional in relationships. And maybe we don't think there's a variety to choose from, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't have have it all analyzed out. But that's one of the beauties of coaching is that we do this,
Yeah.
right? We do this and I'm going to hold that. You're going to watch me hold that,
Yeah.
right? And I just think entering into a coaching agreement in itself, saying yes to being coached, putting the money down, right?
Yep.
Setting the time out in your calendar, to me is the most powerful act of the whole thing, right? We're going to talk all year and it's going to be incredibly transformative and we're going to talk about all the areas of your life and get you to love yourself more than you ever have in your life. But you did it when you signed up, right? You said,
Yeah.
hell yes, right? And you entered this agreement with me. And like you said, there's like this negotiation, like, how's this going to go? Just
Yeah.
accomplishing that. I'm like proud of people when they do that and myself,
Well,
right?
that's the invitation to engage in your life in a whole different way. Like
Yes,
that, like
yes.
even I was onboarding a person and she was so beautiful. She was like, I could do this with the contractor that's coming to my home tomorrow. Yeah. I
Uh-huh,
could do it.
right.
She's like seeing like I could, do you suggest? I said, yeah, you can. Like just how you and I are talking right now, map it over to your professional relationships, to
Yeah.
your personal relationships. It doesn't mean like, sign here, husband, you're agreeing.
Right.
No,
No, it
like,
doesn't have to be as formal, right? But just to hold it internally, even that, like,
right.
I get
Like,
to
this
choose,
is,
even just that. Yeah.
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 And then it creates a much more peaceful experience. And then everybody knows, when everybody knows what's going on, then it's really fun, right? Because
Yes.
nobody's
Yeah.
wondering, can I say this? Can I do that? Is it okay? Like, can I cry, or is that just for therapy? It's like, we clear
Yeah.
all of that up so people know it's all fair game. I don't care if it's personal, professional, or spiritual. It's like, you bring it, like, and we'll talk
Yes.
about it.
Bring it. I just signed a client, and before he sent me the money, I could tell he got a little like nervous, like he had questions that hadn't come up in our talk. And he texted me. It was like this long text, right? And first, I was like, "Thank you for saying all of it," right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, right? And I'll
Yeah.
answer all the questions, and we can talk again if you want. But this is not, right? This is like two people coming in, right?
Yeah.
And we're purposely designing not like a comfort level, like it's never going to be hard, right? But
Right.
an agreement where, like, you got to be able to say anything to me, and I got to be able to say anything to you, right?
Right.
So we're going to start that from the beginning. Thank you for going first, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. It's
yeah.
good. And I think that's my favorite part about coaching, is it's like, we go first, right? As the
Mhm.
coach. Like, and I remember when I started this journey, I remember coaches saying, like, you can't take anybody any further than you've gone yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not externally, it's
It's
internally.
internally. I have like a saying that is coming up in a post sometime, or I'm working on the copy for my new website. I'm like, I'm gonna make a new website this year, right? And so you were talking about how you prepare for a client. For me, it's like I want to get to this place of internal limitlessness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to see your greatness, and I'm here to see your limitlessness, which can sound kind of ridiculous. Like there's limits, right?
No.
But the last thing you want to be limited by is your coach, right?
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah.
I need to get to a place. I need to show up in that there are unlimited possibilities, right? And so that's
Yeah.
my work to do. And I'm not in that place every minute of my whole life, right? But when I show up to your call, I am, right?
Yeah. But
That's my work.
that's the serving and not pleasing, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
being willing to tell the truth in love, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part, and our strength, I believe, as coaches, is being willing to say the things that no one else would say.
Yes. There's a couple people
Even
have
if
told
we're
me.
afraid to say it, even if we
Exactly. Yeah.
ourselves are afraid to say it, there have been so many times where there's two, to me, it's like a couple different experiences. It's the experience of like saying what I might be afraid to say, but I know is going to serve this person, and it always does.
Yeah.
And then there's this other element of like really being in your power and in flow. And this happens a lot when I teach in like my group. And then, one of the people will be like, hey, say what you just said again. And I'll be like, this is recorded. I don't even know what's happening right now. Right. Because it's that, like, it's coming through. It just comes through us. And there's no greater feeling than when you are in your zone of genius, or in your power, or whatever, however you want to talk about it. But it's like, when you're in flow, on fire, whatever. But it's like, that's why I love it, because I know that I could be complete and know that I did what I was supposed to
Oh,
do.
that
And
feeling of, we had this issue in front of us, right? And I was just the most honest about it, and I gave it my all, and I said the thing they didn't want me to say, right? Anyway, and then I got the response that I was afraid of getting, right? But I've had this. I don't always know what happens with people when they're outside of my coaching, when I'm coaching them and they leave, right?
okay.
And how they use that information. But I've had the experience of being coached by our coach, and him saying something to me and me being like, no, like, no, not doing that, right? But a week later, 2 weeks later, 6 months later, it doesn't matter, right? That sentence impacts me, right? It doesn't mean I always agree, like they're always perfectly right, but to be able to say the thing that you know the person has massive resistance to, but it comes out of your mouth anyway because it's the thing that's going to serve them now or in the future. That's
Mm-hmm.
a huge, I to me, that's like, it's not, it's the most serving I can do, right? It's the way I can show up in the world and serve the most. And so I'm grateful for working with people that are willing to do that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that people work with me, right? And I
Yeah.
feel so much gratitude that I have the chance to do this work and show up in a way. And it's really what's happening. It's like it's when it's more powerful than you would have. It's pushed past your limit of what you thought was possible, right? To me,
Yeah,
that's
or
those sentences that
yeah.
push you past, and you're like, "That's not possible," you know. But it's what grows you in. Now you've heard it, so you can grow into it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when, like, I distinctly remember, like, just wanting to tell. This was earlier, not earlier on, but I just remember the transition to like telling my clients I love them, like saying I love you,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Yeah.
how just how, number one, it's real, but then number two, that listening of like, what are they gonna think?
Because you
Right?
know it's yeah, you know it might be beyond their experience. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it's those moments where, and I'm sharing this because there's a sense of like you and I have both been powerfully coached in ways that I don't want to frighten people out of the experience of coaching. And I think ultimately what I'm saying is there, and you said it earlier, just like to be seen and loved by somebody is
Yes.
probably more uncomfortable than having somebody tell you something in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
tell you something that you really that could serve you, but like really being loved by somebody
Yes.
is a profound experience, and that that is different. That is different, and being
Yeah.
that for our clients, and like
Yes.
even
Yes.
like telling my male clients like, hey, I'm about to make it weird, I love you,
I
right?
know, right?
But
You
I mean,
ready to
like,
go? Yeah.
so it's it's beautiful because I think the love that we have for other people and the love that we know that they are is what allows them to be who they've been called to be.
Yes. I've seen um that other coaches loving me full wattage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grows that in me. It's not like a permission, but it's like a freedom, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm free to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then I've seen it in my clients. Like I'm loving them full wattage, right? And they're like squirmy a little bit at first. Like, are you sure? You know? But like
Right.
watching them come into that and then give it
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's going to change every relationship for the rest of their life,
100%.
right? Like every single one, because they
Yeah.
now have this freedom, right, to love at their full wattage. And
I
isn't
love
that
that you
like
keep saying wattage because my maiden name is Watts. So it's like
right,
high
right?
voltage.
But you know what I mean? Like, let it turn all the way on. Like
Yeah.
maybe you've never had anyone do that for you before, and maybe you've never had the experience of really doing that,
Yeah.
right? It's a vulnerable thing, right?
It's like you're being loved and then teaching somebody how to love themselves no matter what at the same time. That's really what's happening when you
That's
hire a
really the
coach.
whole thing,
If
actually.
they're a very good coach, right? They're going to help you achieve your dreams and all of that, but it's not going to be the way you think. It's going to be through loving yourself, honoring yourself, listening to yourself, and creating what and helping you do that. But it's not going to be through, here's 7 steps to creating the life of you. It's not, it's here's how you love yourself into being
The
who you
skilled ones
know.
don't have 7
Yeah.
steps, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have one, it's called listen.
No, I do like some steps sometimes, not gonna lie. But
I'm
um
teasing.
but
I'm
the
teasing.
real rawness that's available, right, in the human experience to me,
Mhm.
um it's like signing up for coaching is signing up for access to that every week,
Yeah.
right? Like we're going down to the raw core every week. And once you get comfortable there and drop the shame from from being, I don't know, different than you want to be sometimes, it's magic, right? To me, that's the magic of living. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been an honor to be in circle with you. You watch me be
Thank
coached, I
you.
watch you be coached. We coach each other at peer support,
It's
which,
good.
yeah, such a gift.
It's how we create an epic life, right?
That is so epic has two meanings. One is like awesome, right? Like
Mhm.
on the edge of what's possible, right? But the other one is letting our full growth and expansion be expressed,
Right.
right? And so that's why I love that word, is because that's when I feel most fulfilled. That's when I like go to sleep at night. And,
Mm.
and it's always through doing a hard thing, right? Like all the heroines and heroes in the movie, like don't get fully expressed because they did the same old thing every day, right?
They were too afraid to
Right.
be
To step
themselves.
fully into what was calling them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
okay. No,
Hey, I don't care, right? But no one's forced to have a coach, right?
right?
But for those that want to step into it, right? And it's you learn that it's not perfectionism. It's not,
No,
right? It's not those ways that we thought would get us there. So
correct.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
This
thank
was
you
so
so much.
fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was so fun. I think we got through all my questions organically with me not even having to look at my sheet. Says you're a pro.